Now, we're going to move on with George Duncan. And George Duncan is the owner of the Human Factor, company based in an organisation based in Thailand. George has a very interesting background. So at one point in his career, he was a Royal Air Force pilot, flying both aeroplanes and helicopters. A man that has come to learn the tough challenges of decision making under sometimes critical circumstances. And George is going to talk about leadership qualities in times of change. Yes, a little delay there. All right, so I'd like to welcome George to the floor. I'm sure you will find this both an interesting and very engaging presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. The pressure is now on. You've been promised this is going to be interesting and engaging. Charles, I have to say I'm relieved because you did have me on the edge of my seat at one moment. When you said that your wife had said no way would she follow you out here, I thought, well, he's here. Don't say that you got rid of your wife. So I'm relieved. I have picked up, unbeknown to me, the graveyard shift, so I shall do my best to keep you all awake. And at one point, as we go through this, I'll actually be discussing sleep, but it will not be the practical exercise. I have a whiteboard down here, and for those at the back, I apologise, there's a little bit of reflection, but if you think I'm turning the lights off after lunch when you've all eaten, you can think again. It's not going to happen. As has just been mentioned, my background was as a military pilot, flying both fast jets and helicopters. I did that in the British Air Force for many years. One of the jobs I was also given there, whilst I was working on a ground job, was at the Royal Air Force College, which was responsible for the education of all new officer cadets that were joining the military. And one of the jobs I had there was actually writing the leadership doctrine for the RAF. I left and commenced a career in the civilian and corporate sector by initially starting up this company, the Human Factor. And that was designed to deliver specific training to aviation professionals and to corporate, the development of corporate leadership and management skills. In aviation, we were totally focused on the reduction of human error. And you'd be glad to know that this kind of training, which was essentially to prevent aircraft accidents, this training is now mandatory across the world for every single pilot, every single member of cabin crew, and every single maintenance technician. And that's something as a fee-paying passenger that's good for you to know. The industry for 17 years now has been tightly focused on these issues. What we have learned over time is that what we were doing in the aviation industry was not really rocket science. It was focusing on people. And it was essentially the skills of leadership and management development in the air. That's all it was. And that's how we were preventing accidents. The type of training has now moved on to the healthcare industry, petrochemical industry, and essentially any industry where you on a day-to-day basis make decisions that are either business critical or life critical. And that's where we tend to focus. I've been running that company now for 12 years. Another company I operate, which has been very successful over 2 years, which has really kept me on my toes. It was a new venture, starting up a quite major financial trading house. I have 4 traders from New Zealand, Russia, and the UK, who trade a very large investment fund. Do we have any traders in here, my profession? Traders are magnificent people. They take risk, but what I did find is they have no off switch. So they'll make you 100,000 in the morning and you'll lose 200,000 in the afternoon. And so I got heavily involved in writing safety protocols and risk management strategies to protect the company's rather significant investment. And that's where I am today, really. I moved to Thailand 4 years ago. I love it here. I built a house in Trang in the south, and just commute between Bangkok and the Middle East and everywhere else when business dictates. I want to look, the title on the form isn't specifically correct. I've developed where I think we should go just by listening to your questions this morning. I want to look at leadership and human error and the effects on human performance. Because at the end of the day, it's these things that are critical in allowing you to successfully implement change. It's not just a set of protocols and a set of procedures. If you do not understand people and how they work, then it is likely that the system you're trying to implement is doomed to fail. We'll take a look at human error. We'll take a look at some of the vision issues. It's quite an ambitious program for an hour. If we can, we'll get on and look at fatigue and sleep, because that's where you'll be at that stage. And we'll look at the effects on human performance and how we can predict that your decision making is not as good as you think it is over a 24-hour period. And we can fine-tune it down to specific times of the day. We'll also look at some physiological factors of stress involved in your decision making and why it's important for you to focus on the people in terms of trying to minimize certain types of stress in the work environment. Some stress is good for us. Without a certain amount of stress, your heart would stop and we will die. So we need stress. We want to try and get rid of the bad parts of stress. And remember that as we go on. No matter what you do, what systems you put in place, organisations do not create success, people do. If you invest large amounts of money in a business, but do not want to invest large amounts of money in your people, the chances are you're going to lose your money at some stage. So people become the most important thing. Let's take a quick look at human error. I'm trying to give you an introduction and a flavour for all of these subjects here. As far as human error goes, there's a human error model. And the first thing we have to accept is this. Everybody makes mistakes. If there's nobody in this room that has ever made a mistake, go and get a coffee. Because I can't help you with anything. Okay? The doors remain closed, everybody remains in the seat. So we do make mistakes. It's a normal thing that occurs. Stress and fatigue are expected in many of our industries and environments. It doesn't matter whether you're in banking, whether you're in industry, whether you're in agriculture, whether it's finance, it doesn't matter. A certain amount of stress and fatigue are expected. What we need to look at is how your decision making is affected by these two items and how effective leadership and management can help mitigate you and your organisation against the effects of fatigue and stress. Trading that we do is only a countermeasure system. It's only one tool in many that you would have to use as the leader or manager in an organisation. It's not the answer to everything. It's just part of it. Human error, where do we go? It's a long time, 100 years ago. Some classic examples. Titanic. Not only was it thought the ship was invincible, the captain thought he was invincible. You know that one? Chernobyl. Yeah. Chernobyl, the nuclear power station in Russia. The Exxon Valdez, until the Deepwater Horizon incident, was probably the worst ecological disaster the world did now, at a cost of billions and billions. You know. This is Hyper Alpha in the North Sea. 163 men died on board this oil rig, as you see it burning, and it was purely down to a human mistake, or a series of human mistakes. Anybody know what this one is? Yeah, 3 Mile Island. Now, 3 Mile Island, nothing happened, did it? Did it? Did anything? You know the picture, nothing happened, did it? That's what it tells us. Of course, the media panic was huge. And for the younger ones amongst us, 3 Mile Island was a nuclear power station facility in the United States, where a series of simulations and tests were being run, and it all went horribly wrong. And this nuclear facility nearly went into meltdown. But we got away with it. No, we didn't. Of all of the things I would put on here, this incident has probably had the most global, history-changing effects we've ever known. What this did was put a complete wrap at the time on the development of the nuclear power industry in the United States and looking for alternative energy forms. What that did was then continue and necessitate the US obsession with fossil fuels and oil. And that has led to everything you can think of throughout the Middle East. This was an incredibly significant event. In terms of human error, the people in the end, it was incredibly difficult for them to cope with. If I'm sat on an aeroplane and something goes wrong, I will get a warning panel flash in front of me, red lights or amber lights. Have a guess how many red and amber lights I can cope with as a human before I start to reach maximum mental capacity. Give me a number. Who was that? 3. Absolutely. 3. When it all went wrong at 3 Mile Island, they were faced with 120 different warnings and actions. It's just not humanly possible to deal with it at the time. Challenger, human error. It was predicted before this launched it was going to explode. And it did. We knew it was going to do that. Columbia, the last shuttle that burnt up in the air, human error. Deepwater Horizon, how many billions are we at the damage was there? And of course we can't leave the finance industry out of this. There are many would say that the crisis that started in the United States, and the global crisis, may have been caused by knowledgeable criminal intent. But it's spiraled out of control to human error and problems with supervision and implementing certain management practices. I've got 1,000 pictures of aircraft accidents that I specialise in. I don't want to put any of them up because I don't have time to rationalise them with you. And I would put you off flying for the rest of your life if I showed them to you. And the truth is, flying is the safest form of transport in the world. So I'll skip on for a minute. The medical industry is quite interesting, how human error affects us there. There's a term here, iatrogenesis. In 2005, these were the deaths by medical error in the United States in 12 months. And associated costs from litigation by the insurance companies. Adverse reaction to drugs, 106,000 people died, at a cost in terms of litigation of $12 billion. Medical error, the wrong diagnosis. Bed sores, 115,000 people died of bed sores. Now, they didn't physically die of the bed sore, they died of the secondary infection that you get in your body with the bed sore. The costs here were $55 billion. Why so high? What does it indicate to you when people are dying of bed sores? Bed sores accumulate when you don't get turned, for example, when you're immobile. So if you're lying on your back, you'll get bed sores all over here, where the pressure of the rubber is lying on the bed. What does it indicate to you? Lack of care, absolutely. Spot on, nail on the head. Lack of care. And hence the claims became fairly significant. Infections, the superbugs in hospitals, 88,000. Malnutrition. People dying of malnutrition in hospital. Now, these people were probably very ill anyway. We've got no data on the litigation costs of this. Outpatients. You go in saying, I've got a headache, the doctor says, take these tablets, it's nothing, we'll see you next week. Now, you keel over 48 hours later with brain tumor. Of these, again, a fairly significant amount of money in terms of litigation costs. Unnecessary. The young boy goes into hospital to have a tooth taken out because he's allergic to local anaesthetic. They give him a general anaesthetic, and the airway tube melted because they left the heater on, and the airway tube melted inside his throat and killed him. So it was gross medical error that caused these, and hence the massive amount of money in terms of litigation. Surgery related, your left kidney needed taking out, and the doctor took out the right kidney. It happens. It really does happen. Look at the costs here. In America, in the same year, 530,000 people died of cardiac disease. 540,000 people died of cancer. Human error in the United States that year killed 786,000 people. And quite rightly, in the US, a lot of money is put into cancer research and cardiac disease research. No money was put into human error research. It was killing more people than anything else at a cost to insurance companies of $292 million. So this is where human error came into its own. Most aviation companies, they will lose 3% of their annual turnover every single year because of human error. And that's not the major loss of an aircraft, that is the day-to-day error caused by people working in that environment. 3%. Now, as most airlines only work on a 6% profit margin, that's actually 50% of your profit. Any wonder that in September, the accountants are saying, budget cut, budget cut, budget cut, we're not meeting our targets, because this money was disappearing into the ether. All down to human error. The top 8 maintenance errors we've identified. We'll start looking at people and relating these to people. I'll just whiz through these. Let me put them all up. These were people servicing aircraft, professionals, licensed engineers. Falling into all of these traps, the fitting of the wrong parts, incorrect installation of components. Nobody went to work in the morning intending to do this. What we needed to look at with the human and with you is, why do you do it? Why do you make mistakes? Why do we make mistakes with our decision making? Most things occur never out of one isolated incident. They all occur from a thing that we would term the chain of events. All of the photographs I showed you, every single one of them had a chain of events that led up to it. Certain small things were occurring, and those small things built up into the big problem. You don't necessarily have to term this as an accident. It can be an incident, or it can be a major failing in a business project. There'll never be one thing that does it. Our argument is that if you can identify the links in the chain, then perhaps you can do something to break the chain. If you can break the chain, the accident or incident or business, failing of a business decision will not happen. You may have a different one, but that one won't happen. And up here, you can look at it as management, maintenance, and crew. You can look at it as management, team supervisors, workers. You can look at it as management, economic analyzers, and traders. You can put anything in here. It applies to your organisation. And for all organisations, a man called Gordon DuPont did an extensive series of research to try and find out what were the most common mistakes we make as humans. What could you look at in your people? And he came up with a thing known as the dirty dozen. The dozen is a colloquial term in English for 12. And these are the 12 most common mistakes that humans make. I'll run through them here. The first one is a lack of communication. In every business I've worked in, if you are going to have a problem in your industry or your organisation, it is most likely going to be caused by a lack of effective communication. Complacency. Does everybody understand what that means? I tell you that I can't be bothered because you've probably heard it anyway. Complacency means we either expect people to know something, or you've done something so many times that we don't need to bother checking the rules, checking the regulations, checking the company procedures. A lack of knowledge. Distractions. What's the biggest distraction we face these days of work? Thanks to Steve Jobs and the like, the mobile phone. And just when you're in that critical meeting and the phone goes, hello, Mum, no, I can't speak for work. Mum, I'm trying to close a $20 million deal. I know you don't need to back later, Mum. Okay? The distractions caused by mobile phone are fairly significant. And also your own people. Let me put these up. A lack of teamwork. Fatigue. And we'll look at sleeping very shortly. Do we have any mums in here? Any mothers of young children? Yeah? How exhausting is fatigue when that baby will not sleep at night? You've suffered one of the most extreme fatiguing environments, children, at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning. A lack of resources. Resources, time, people, money. Have you got the correct resources in your workplace? And pressure. That's not only pressure applied externally. Who normally applies most pressure to you? Yourself, isn't it? It's a self-imposed pressure. Or indeed, the thing we'll discuss, peer pressure from the members of your team. A lack of assertiveness. This is not just going to your boss and saying no, it's a willingness to state your case. Is this a problem culturally in Asia? Somebody can be assertive and tell me. Yeah? It is, isn't it? This is a problem in Asia when this lack of assertiveness comes in. You know your boss is wrong, but you don't want to tell them. And as we touch over leadership, I want to throw some ideas by you about how you can instigate change. Your boss might not instigate change for you. I can't do anything about that. All I can suggest is if you believe in some of the concepts, you do it for your people. Because eventually your boss will move on, and their subordinates will move on, and you will be the boss. And that's when change will effectively start to take place. Stress. Some stress is good for us. A lot of stress is awfully bad for us. I've had 3 aircraft crashes. Look at my hair, I'm only 24 really. And it has certain physiological effects on the body, which we need to look at. I'm very good at handling stress. You don't know at the moment if I'm stressed or not. There could be anything happening in my life, because on the outside I can hide it. What I cannot hide are the physiological effects going on inside the body. And boy, does it take years off your life. If you're working in an organisation as the boss, it is incumbent on you to manage your people's stress as well, because you'll get more out of them. They'll last longer. So, we'll take a brief look there. A thing called norms, the normally accepted practice of doing the work. And from organisation to organisation, these are all different. One bank is different to another bank. One manufacturing company is different to another manufacturing company in their ethos and the way that they do things. That's the thing known as the dirty dozen. Again, I think Rob's plan is that he will provide all of you with copies of all of these slides today. A lot of this information led to a thing known as the error iceberg. This is incredibly accurate, and we use it to predict accidents now in the petrochemical industry, in the aviation industry, with frightening regularity and frightening accuracy. And what we found is that for every one serious event in your organisation, and that could be a loss of a $1 billion contract, for example, there are 40 operationally significant events and 600 unreported errors. Every time you have 600 unreported errors, the law of probability is saying you are about to have your massive failure, your serious incident. Qantas was the safest airline in the world. It took 20 years before it had a serious incident. And we say if it takes 20 years before you have 600 unreported errors, then that's how long it will be before your serious incident. And they reckon they'd got to there, and then sure enough, the first serious incident was when one of their aircraft left the runway and tarnished an otherwise unblemished record over 20 years. It happens in almost all organisations where the decision-making becomes critical. And I would basically challenge myself by stating that most people here work in organisations where on a day-to-day basis, the results of decision-making, incorrect decision-making, or bad decision making can be serious. Managing errors, just looking through this. Replace blame behaviours with gain behaviours. And again, we're getting into delicate territory culturally here. We often see that if somebody does something wrong, punish them and get rid of them. Well, what you do then is get rid of the person that made the error. You don't get rid of the system that caused them to make the error. Explore, not judge. Remain calm. Not emotional. Again. Remain calm. Find out what happened. Don't react to what you think has happened. How many times have we made that mistake when we slapped the wrong child in the middle of an argument when the children are fighting? Find out what happened. Don't react to what you think happened. Get all of the information before you make a decision. Focus on the process that allowed the mistake to happen. I worked with the Icelandic Coast Guard with their ships, and they were very proud of their operation. But one of their ships went out to sea, and the engineer that had been working on that ship for 25 years put the wrong engine oil in the ship. As it was 200 miles out in the ocean, the engine seized. And the Coast Guard had the terrible embarrassment of being towed back into port. And as the ship got back to port, the director of the Coast Guard was stood there waiting. And as the engineer walked down the steps of the ship, the director of the Coast Guard said, "You're fired. Go. Get your things. Go." And this man who'd worked for them for 25 years was sacked. And the director was very proud of himself. I asked the director why the mistake happened. He said, "I don't know. I got rid of the guy." "Yeah, but why? He's worked for you for 25 years. He's an expert." Was the oil in the wrong container? Was it packaged wrongly? Was he fatigued? And of course, the director couldn't answer any of the questions because he'd sacked the guy. Well, what he'd done was simply get rid of the person and never focused on the process. I guarantee within 25 years there will be another ship's engine in the Icelandic Coast Guard that seizes at a cost of $5 million. I guarantee it. Because the same processes are still in place. We never change them. Most of us don't go into work in the morning thinking, "I'm going to make a mistake today." We don't do that. We go in with the best intentions of the company and the organisation. Certain things will lead us to make mistakes. And if we don't pick up on those indicators, and there are physiological indicators that you're about to make a mistake, make a mistake. Okay, leadership. What is it? What's leadership? Let me just pull this over. What is leadership? Some of you are in a position of leadership. Some of you are interested in how leadership, the effects on change management and how it may assist change management. What is leadership? Any ideas? If you shout them out or repeat what you say. Again, motivating people. That's a good one. Lead by example. Don't expect people to do what you won't do yourself. Perhaps. Any other ideas on leadership? Sorry again?
Generate respect.
Generate respect. We need to generate respect, don't we? Guiding an organisation to meet its goals. An organisation without goals is like a ship in the night, really, isn't it? Just going back to the gaining respect. Earning respect. I worked for an engineering company. I was called in to do some work, and it was a 26-year-old graduate out of university, and he was in charge of 20 old-time engineers. You know, the hands on the metal men who did all the work. And I walked in and sat down for a cup of tea before I'd even agreed to take the job. And I said to the young guy, "What seems to be the problem?" He said, "It's simple. I'm not getting the respect I deserve." I said, "It sounds like you are. Here's a good book. I can't do anything for you. You know, go read this book." Now, again, we're looking at certain cultural issues here. Do we deserve respect? That's a tough question in Thailand. Do we deserve respect? Let's have somebody from Thailand answer. Do we deserve respect? Yes? Do we? Okay. You see, in the West, the culture would be, we have to earn your respect. I have got to respect you in order for you to respect me. So it doesn't matter how powerful I am at the head of an organisation. It doesn't matter how big my bank balance is. If I don't respect you in the West, you won't respect me. And am I going to get the best out of you? No. And we may respect people in Asia culturally either because of their position or because of age. But it may actually mean deep down, you still think they're an ass, okay? Inside. And that is when the boss is not going to get the best out of you. And perhaps if you look at different definitions of leadership, this is the basic definition of leadership. Getting people to do what you want them to do, whether they like it or not. It's true, isn't it? However, how many times have you ever come up with a good idea at work? You come up with a good idea. And if you go to your boss and you say, boss, I've got a really good idea, and the boss listens and says, yeah, okay. And they don't do anything. They don't give you any feedback. And they conduct themselves day-to-day basis on this. You will do what I tell you to do, whether you like it or not. Are you going to do the job? Yeah, you want to keep your salary and your pay back. So you'll do the job. But are you going to give me the benefit of your flair and initiative? Will you give me the benefit of all of your good ideas? The answer is likely to be no. So who's losing? I'm losing as the boss, you're losing, the organisation is losing. So this will work on occasions. But if you are like this every single day, you're not going to be doing the best for your organisation at all. You could alter the definition slightly. Effective leadership, making people want to do what you want them to do and enjoy it. And that doesn't mean the lady outside saying, I love sweeping this floor. I love cleaning these toilets. It's striking at what you were saying earlier about motivating people. Motivating people to do what you want them to do. To want to do it. They're not following you out of idle curiosity. They're following you because they want to. Perhaps because they admire the way you work. Here are some definitions from FTSE 100 companies. The top 100 companies in the UK in terms of their worth and turnover. I have not changed these. These are people I've worked with. And when I've spoken to the training manager or the managing director and said, what is your definition of leadership? Because we need to know that before we can work with an organisation. We have to work around it. This is what they said. These were the top company directors and CEOs. Caring for people and investing in them. Is that leadership? It's part of. And again, we'll go back. If you care for your people and invest in them, you will get a return. Anybody ever worked for Glaxo Wellcome? Glaxo Wellcome have about a 3-year queue of people wanting jobs with them. They were one of the best companies in the world because they invested heavily in their people. They made their people think they were number one. If you wanted to go on a training course in Australia at a price of $5,000, you could go. You could go to London. You could do anything you wanted. And the people in Glaxo Wellcome thought they were number one. They weren't. The directors were very shrewd. They knew that if they invested a relatively small amount in the development of their individuals, the payback would be on the bottom line. Profitability remained high. The biggest cost to any organisation, retention of staff. They don't have a problem with people leaving. Everybody wanted to stay. That's the biggest cost to an organisation. So they got their money back 2, 3, 4, 5-fold what they used to invest in their people. The next, being in touch by walking the job. Strange thing. Anybody has a guess as to what that means? Being in touch by walking the job. Sorry? Don't use email, don't do the phone. Get out of your office and go and see your people. Go and find out. Now, I'm not saying you've got to roll your sleeves up and learn how to make a widget or whatever it is your people do. It's going and finding out day to day what their problems are and perhaps how you can help them overcome them. You have to be careful. What happens if you're there all the time, every day, looking over their shoulder? You end up with a concept we term micromanagement. And people will just say, why does he want me to do this? He's doing it himself anyway. So you have to give your people freedom, but be there for them. Know them. The Americans are great at this in some companies. They're great at knowing their people. You will, from nowhere, you'll get a birthday card on your birthday. You get an anniversary card saying, thanks for all the work you've done this year, happy birthday, happy anniversary to you and your wife, Jo. It's like, wow, how did you know that? It's easy. Your records are in personnel. But they take the time to keep their people actively involved in their organisation. And it pays. Catching people doing the right things. When does the boss normally call you into his office? Yeah, when you made a mistake, you've done the wrong things. This idea was actually put up by a guy called Ken Blanchard when he wrote an incredibly successful series of books called The 1 Minute Manager. Started off with The 1 Minute Manager. I commend it to all of you. It only takes an hour to read on the BTS or whatever. 2 journeys on the BTS and we finished it. And one of his concepts in that was catch your people doing the right things. And say to them, Charles, can you come into my office, please? What is it, boss? I just want to tell you, this week you've done a remarkable job. It's been fantastic. And the success we've had this week, I put it down to you. Thank you. Oh, watch me doing this next week. I want to see the feedback on it. But it's catching people doing the right things, doing the good things, and not always telling them what they've done wrong. Reinforce what they're doing well for you, because you want to keep them doing that. Letting people know what's expected of them. It's really quite simple. It's not a definition of leadership. You'll find with most of these, it's like everything, the ingredients to the big soup pan full of leadership. If you put them all together, you're getting somewhere. Listening. What does listening mean? Ladies are great at listening. Men are terrible at listening. And there's a fundamental difference in the way our brains work. Men like to solve problems. So when a woman comes home at night, and I'll say, how was your day at work, darling? It was terrible. The boss was terrible. He's done this and he's done that. And straight away, I'll stop listening. You tell him tomorrow, if he does that, I'll be now tell him this and tell him that. And I know a guy who used to do this, and his wife would burst into tears. And he'd say, what am I doing wrong? He said, I'm solving it for her. And I tried to tell him, I said, she just wants you to listen. So he tried that the following night. And at dinner, the wife says, the boss is terrible, he's driving me mad, he's made all these bad decisions. And he just sat there going, really? And how do you feel? I feel terrible, I feel terrible. What can you do about it? Wow. And she would say, and at the end of that, there was no tears. And she turned to him and said, I feel so much better. And it's because women know how to listen. Men don't know how. Sorry to say. We have to learn and get in touch with our feminine side. Okay? Learn how to listen. And remember, listening and hearing are not the same thing. Being enthusiastic and hopefully laughing. This wasn't from a comedy company or anything. What he was actually driving at here was a wonderful little statement. Attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth catching? If you go into work and you are miserable and down, it will spread like a disease. And everybody is miserable and down. If you go in and you are upbeat, up-tempo, it spreads. Again, I'll go back, if anybody's ever been to the USA, You've only got to go to the checkout at the supermarket and have a nice day. That sets me up already. And when people are enthusiastic and positive, it can spread. Regarding change as a springboard for development. Oh, there we go. We are all in the business of change. Is change a good thing? Can be. What criteria should we put on change before we instigate change? What should be the purpose of change? There's only a few. To improve what? But it's not everything. Okay, to improve quality, good. To improve the bottom line. Or maybe it could be to improve the lifestyle for the workers in some respects. So to improve the quality of your product, improve the bottom line, improve the lifestyle and working conditions for your people. And if you can't put change on that, then don't do it. Don't instigate change. Because it'll fail. Change, in fact, in almost every case, must be measurable on the bottom line. If it's not measurable on the bottom line, don't do it. It's just a waste. Taking and making unpopular decisions. If we have a really unpopular decision at work, we will go to our subordinates and our team and we'll say, the boss has said you've got to do this. We pass it up the line. Why do we do that? We don't want to be the bad guy. We don't want to be the ones taking the rap with the people. So we'll pass it up to the boss. Do we need to do that? Probably there will be that we do. And this thing here, getting into the firing line, not out of it. That doesn't mean I'll take a bullet for you. What it means is I will protect my people. And if you have done something, and you've done it in accordance with my instructions, my procedures, or the company procedures, and everything else, if you do that, and it all goes horribly wrong, then it is my obligation to support you. Not to step to one side and allow the boss a clear line of shot towards you. It's to support you. And Ken Blanchard was very strict about this. He was saying, if your people make a mistake, the first person to look at is yourself. Did you brief them correctly? Did you equip them with the right resources? Did you train them? Do they have the skill set to do the job correctly? And if not, you've got to go back and retrain and re-equip and re-resource and re-knowledge. And you do that 3 times. If they're still making the same mistake in 3 times, the fault was yours. And you've got to take a look at you. At the people. But in the meantime, you look at you. 3 times, this guy has a fundamental problem that he's dealing with. But it's a case of supporting your people. The problem here is that will your boss support you? And the chances are, I don't know, does your boss support you if it all goes wrong? If he doesn't, I'm sorry. But if you believe in this, you need to do it for your people. You have got to support them. And again, the bosses will move on in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time. You be left in a position where you can instigate the change throughout the organisation. But it's got to happen from somewhere. If we cannot get top-down support, which is what we need to instigate the leadership of change, then we have to do it bottom-up. Preferably we get it running both ways. I've seen whole projects fail because it never got the buy-in from the top. Everybody at the bottom wanted it, the people at the top didn't support it. So the project fails. So we have to try and get the buy-in from the top. It's not always that easy. Right, fatigue setting in. Sleep. How do you feel? It's dreadful. Right, you are now smack in the middle of a thing known as one of your circadian lows. Has anybody here heard of a circadian rhythm? Circadian rhythm, okay? It's written like this. Circadian, Latin. Circa meaning about, dian, a day. We all have a 24, well, it's actually a little bit longer, it's quite complex, but we've got a 24-hour cycle of human performance. And if I were to draw a graph of your performance and what happens in your body with your circadian rhythm, it's the same for all of us. This graph I'm drawing here is a graph of time, this way. And this here is a graph of your body temperature. Positive and below the norm. This is the normal body temperature here. Over a 24-hour cycle, what your body does is not quite sinusoidal, is this. And this, your circadian rhythm is designed to control everything. Your metabolic rate, your respiratory processes, everything. And right now, there is an increase in your body temperature. We haven't turned the aircon down. Okay, there's an increase in core body temperature. And this occurs, sadly for me and Terry, about 13:30 to 15:30. Every single day. Your body temperature is at high. And now, you've eaten food, and all the body wants to do is close down all systems and metabolize the food and turn it into energy. When we look at most major accidents, road traffic accidents, aircraft accidents, petrochemical, we can fine-tune accidents down to 2 periods of the 24-hour cycle. And this is one of them, here, between 13:30 and 15:30. The other point is a low point in human performance is here. This is a drop in core body temperature. It occurs between 0300 and 0600. And that is when you as a human are at your lowest point in terms of your decision-making ability and human performance. How many times do we hear the United Nations Security Council pushing through urgent decisions? We're working on this all night because the deadline is tomorrow. And they'll come out with a decision at 4 o'clock in the morning. That decision is going to be a bad decision. We are not designed to make decisions here. In 1973, there was a professor, James Carruthers. He did a lot of work on trying to find out how the brain functioned. And he found out that the brain produces a thing known as alpha waves. Alpha waves occur when we relax, especially during, for example, the early stages of meditation. Alpha waves are associated with a state of relaxation in the brain. When we produce alpha waves, we're not very good at making decisions. We don't rationalise decisions well. And what he found out was that there's a point in time during the day when your brain generates alpha waves. You can't stop it. Because it's part of a regeneration and maintenance program. And your brain produces maximum alpha waves, whether you're asleep or awake. They found this out separately, between 3 and 6 in the morning. So that tied in with your metabolic and circadian low really means that between those times you are absolutely at your worst. And the effects of a lack of sleep are really profound. How many people here have gone for 24 hours without sleep? Okay, how do you feel after 24 hours without sleep? You crashed out over 18 hours. There's payback. Anybody else? What about when it gets to 36 hours? How do you feel? Again? Sure. All automation after 36 hours. I've been forced on me up to 4.5 days. I was a battling wreck in 2.5 or 3 days. Sleep deprivation was used as a form of capital punishment for hundreds of years in China. Because you can survive without food for 2 months. You can survive without sleep for 13 to 17 days. That's it. And at that point you will die. You don't need to waterboard people to get them to speak. Keep them without sleep for 45 to 50 hours, and they will tell you anything you want to know. Because the effects of fatigue on the body are so extreme, we can't combat it. And those of you who have had young children will know the effects of being woken night after night, 1:30 in the morning to 3:30, by the bundle of love that has come into your life suddenly becomes a screaming noise machine. And I remember with one of my first children who suffered from bad problems in the stomach, about 2 in the morning, colic, and he would scream and scream and scream and scream. I remember one morning at 3 o'clock in the morning wanting to pick him up in the car and just shake and say, "Shut up!" I was so fatigued. And I could feel this coming on, and I just thought, let him cry. I walked out of the room. Because I felt within me a loving, rational anger. This rage building up, all caused by fatigue and lack of sleep. Has anybody experienced that? It's just overwhelming. Oh, that is just one of the effects of fatigue and lack of sleep in humans. How much sleep do you need as a human? How much? You all need pretty much the same. Some of you say you do okay with 4 hours or 5 hours. Babies need most, and there's a specific reason for that. How much sleep do we need? Yeah, it's actually 6 to 7 hours sleep the human body needs. The sleep loss is accumulative. You can catch up on lost sleep. So I'm with you. You work for 24 hours, get 18 hours, back. The problem is you can't put sleep in the bank. So I can't think I've got a 24-hour day tomorrow, I'm going to sleep for 12 hours today. It doesn't work. But you can catch up lost sleep. Sleep's a fascinating subject. Not many people know anything about it. Yet we spend a third of our lives doing it. We know nothing about it. If you're like my teenage son, you spend half your life doing it and know nothing about it. But we need this 6 to 7 hours. If you only got 5 hours sleep last night, you're running at a 1-hour deficit. And your body keeps that deficit. And it will build up and build up. When you get, and it's quite frightening, when you get to a 7-hour sleep deficit, you have officially got something known as chronic fatigue syndrome. I bet most of us in here are suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome. There are physiological effects to lack of sleep. I bet you had the same stories in Thailand as we heard in England. People say, I need to get my beauty sleep. I can see some of the ladies here get lots of sleep, and me and Ron get very little. We need sleep, because sleep is a regenerative process for the body and for the brain. So if you don't get this 6 or 7 hours, it's all going to start to build up. And sleep has a specific function. And there is a specific time when you should sleep. You need to be asleep at around about 11 p.m. every night. And I will give you 30 minutes either side. Because by this stage, sleep and circadian rhythms are all brought into play by light levels. Everything's activated by light. Natural light. And when it starts getting dark, the body puts processes into place saying we're getting ready for sleep. And at 11 p.m. you need to be asleep. Because you have a 2-hour phase here, between 11 and 0100. And during this phase of sleep, it's a very deep phase of sleep, your body puts all of its energy into regenerating the physical body. This is your beauty sleep, between 11 and 1. This is when the body repairs all the skin cells. It repairs cells in the organs. It repairs everything. If you work permanent night shifts, you will age more quickly. Because the sad thing is, this regenerative process only works then, no other time. If you sleep at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 4, it doesn't work. It only happens then. And after this point, you go into a series of sleep phases here that we call REM. What does that stand for? Rapid eye movement. Rapid eye movement. And you'll see in the baby, the eyes will be flickering up and down. In any one night, you'll have 5 sessions maximum of REM. And those sessions can last anywhere between 5 minutes and 20 minutes, no more. So if you wake up by me in the morning thinking you've been dreaming all night, you haven't. It's only for a short period of time. But during that session, and I think Terry will go on to allude to some of these things, that is when the brain goes through its regenerative process. That's when the brain orders everything that's happened during the day. It's when it stores it away in memory. It's when it repairs connections between neurons. And it only happens at these times here. It will happen from 1 o'clock in the morning to 6 to 7 o'clock in the morning. No other time. How many people go to bed before 1 o'clock? Some do, some don't. We really should. And of course, the sad thing is that when we're suffering from large amounts of stress at work, how do we tend to deal with it? Culturally, as men are the worst offenders. How do men tend to deal with very high levels of stress? We go out for a drink, don't we? I'm not talking about 1 beer or 1 whiskey. I'm talking 5, 6, 7, 8, or a half a bottle of whiskey. Oh, I think that makes us feel better. The problem is alcohol suppresses REM sleep. It doesn't suppress anything else. So when you go out for a party till 1 o'clock in the morning, we get home, we've missed all of this bit, and then we get in bed and we miss all of this bit as well. And when I was a young university student, I could do that every day of the week, because I didn't need the physical healing processes of the body and the brain. I do it every night of the week. If I do that now, it will take me 4 days to get over it. Now, for your people to be in key performance, they need to have managed sleep. You get more out of them. Many people, you can fine-tune all sorts of definitions of leadership. For me, the definition of leadership is quite simple. It's the ability to get the best out of people for any given situation. So, now that might mean one day shouting at them and barking at them. It might mean coercing and persuading and negotiating with them. You have to choose with your people. The key message, I guess, is that leadership, there are many, many definitions of it. You have to choose. And when it comes to implementing change, it will become your responsibility. And culturally in Asia, in the hierarchical system, there are stumbling blocks. We cannot tell our boss often what we really want to tell him. Well, okay, we can live with that. It's a system that's in place. But if you want to do things differently, do it. Do it for your people. Allow them to tell you what they really think. If I ask you, what is your opinion of one of my ideas, I'm asking you because I value your opinion. I'm not asking you because I want to hear you say, great idea, boss. Because if it's not a great idea, I want you to tell me. Because you'll stop myself falling on my face in 3 weeks' time. Don't just think the boss wants to say it's a great idea, boss. It's not. I'm asking you because I value your opinion. The issue we've got in Asia is I need to tell you that. If I come into your company, I need to sit down one-on-one and say to you, if I ask your opinion, I want you to tell me the truth. You're not going to be punished. In fact, maybe even rewarded. I'm telling you because I value your opinion. I want the truth. You have got to start doing this with your people. And it is no use equipping young graduates and getting them to aspire to change and taking them out of here and putting them in your organisation. And they've got all of these great ideas and suddenly you stamp all over their aspirations and ambitions and you stop them because you don't allow it. You need to allow people to change because there are countries within ASEAN that have this culture and they will allow their people to contribute and their organisations will be better. And if you do not change, your people will be at a distinct disadvantage when we come to a very close-knit, cross-border business community. And there's only 2 years left. The race is on. So we need to change. I'm going to have to wrap up there because it's 40 seconds to go before my hour. We have lots more things to cover. Thanks for your time. I know it's a heavy session after lunch. And you're hoping coffee break, ready to drink a lot of food. Okay? We're going to have a coffee. I'm just going to hand over to Don for the moment. Can I thank Charles and Harold and Don for allowing us to use the university? It's great. And our sponsor, Darren, thanks for helping us sort this out. Okay? Thanks very much, folks.